And so when I say Chinese, I want you to scream out the nation that's associated with this. For example, if I say Chinese, you're going to say what?
China.
All right, let's say it with authority. When I say Chinese, you say what? China. All right, that's just a test right there. So here we go. Chinese.
China.
Russian.
Russia.
Italian.
Italy.
German.
Germany.
Swedish.
Sweden.
Korean.
Korea.
Egyptian.
Egypt.
Nigerian.
Nigeria.
Black.
Exactly. Nothing. Tell him, Pastor. Tell him, Pastor. Black, nothing.
I hope you were able to successfully identify the issue.
The lion won't sleep tonight, 'cause we woke now, and we woke now. I said the lion won't sleep tonight, 'cause we woke now, and we woke now. They want us to sell our souls to barter profit, like God's property. It's hard to market, so we steady to aim, keep your eyes on target. 'Cause when you got to drive, yeah, they'd rather you park it. But I don't valet, you ain't getting these keys. I'm keeping closed hands, I'm on bended knee. I'm just a reflection, dealing with 8 sections. Art mixed with life, you can feel the convection. Your lion won't sleep tonight, 'cause we woke now, and we woke now. I said the lion won't sleep tonight, 'cause we woke now, and we woke now. I said
the same people that have stripped us of our identity and labeled us as a color have told us what it means to be black.
You know what you are? You are an ancient Israelite.
Ancient is there. That's who we are. That's who we are. So if you give me time, if you give me time,
But
all that he said.
no, we don't have.
So many years.
I know. Look at this. This is pages and pages of
Yes.
notes. And I promise we'll give more teaching. But here is my challenge to you.
All right.
I'm hearing some of your traditions. It's like the days of the Bible.
Yes.
Do you want to remain ancient Israelites, or you want to be Jews? Do you want to?
The same people that have stripped us of our identity and labeled us as a color have told us what it means to be black. And the vernacular.
Today, it is prohibited, and you can Google this, to do a DNA test in Israel. Totally forbidden. Wrong. It's illegal. It's a crime. You'll be jailed if you do a DNA test in Israel. Why? Because they know the truth will come out. You come from Poland, you come from Ukraine, you came from Europe, you came from everywhere else. And they were the original Middle Eastern Jews who lived together with the Muslims and the Christians for centuries. For centuries. So what happened to a lot of the Jews?
Assalamu alaikum. In the 13th tribe, Arthur Koestler traces the origin of Eastern Europe's Jewish population that was largely decimated by the Nazi onslaught during the Second World War. Through extensive research, he discusses the history of a trading empire that was set up by a tribe known as the Khazars. The Khazar Empire was located between the expanding power blocks of Christianity and Islam, and the people were converted to Judaism by their king as a way of standing apart from both. The Khazarians and their wealth were dispersed through the countries of Eastern Europe after the collapse of the Khazar Empire. The Khazarians were not a Semitic people, that they called themselves Jews after their conversion to Judaism is as absurd as the Chinese Muslims calling themselves Arabs.
The true Jews of Israel are your black ancestors, are your black ancestors, are your black ancestors. The true Jews of Israel are your black ancestors. You think you and Kyle make TikToks together? Kyle only cares about money. Think about it. Are you really making TikToks together, or is Kyle profiting off of you? It's just like the Lost Tribes of Israel. It's just like the Lost Tribes of Israel.
I was noticing that you're kind of hanging out a lot with Kyle lately. Is there a problem with that? No, I think it's amazing. It's awesome that someone like you could be okay with someone like him, given all the new information lately. You know, the stuff that's come out about how the Jews stole the black race's identity? That the lost tribes of Judah were actually all Africans? You didn't hear about this? Black people are actually the Jews and people like Kyle have taken that from them? Stop talking to me. When the Jews came to America to escape persecution in World War II, they found that blacks were already the underclass in America. So they had to invent a story for themselves which they could make everyone believe because Kyle runs Hollywood.
Wells comes face to face with the man he's been searching for. A new portrait of the common ancestor of every man today. Adam. Without the skull, we can't know for sure what Adam looked like. But a combination of genetic evidence, Bender's forensic skills, and cutting-edge computer software suggests he looked something like this. Thousands of years after the Bible, and hundreds of years after Michelangelo, we have a whole new face for Adam.
I was very excited when I first started to get evidence, and it was so counterintuitive. I'd put 20 Europeans and 20 African Americans on a sheet of X-ray film, and every African American showed differences, and all the Europeans looked the same. And I thought I'd mislabeled something, or I thought I'd made some drastic mistake. And we kept repeating and repeating things. As we got more samples from different areas, I realized that it was a difference in the pattern, and that this whole new type of evidence based on mitochondria was going to change the way we thought about modern humans.
Their bones were discovered in Kafse caves near Nazareth in Galilee in 1933. 13 fragile skeletons, one a woman, a tiny baby at her feet. When these bones were first uncovered, they were the oldest complete modern human skeletons ever found.
It does not matter what color Jesus was. What matters is that he came to the earth, lived a perfect life, died a death for the sins of the world, and then conquered the grave, proving that he is the Son of God. That's all that matters. That's all that matters. That's all that matters.
It just doesn't matter. 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 It just doesn't matter.
But the CT scan has one more surprise for Alejandro. Shammai's ethnicity.
Well, they have just told me that Shammai has a Nubian feature, which means that their ruling family was probably Nubian, and that was unexpected.
Examining Shammai's anatomy closely, the thickness of his bones and the shape of his nasal cavity, the anthropologists think he was a black African, likely from neighboring Nubia. A huge revelation that challenges the prevailing image of the Egyptian ruling class.
We always thought the ancient Egyptian elites were Mediterranean type. We always thought the ancient Egyptian elites were Mediterranean type. We always thought the ancient Egyptian elites were Mediterranean type. We always thought the ancient Egyptian elites were Mediterranean type. And in this sense, Shema is representing the society of the frontier in which different ethnic groups were mixed. At the end, it doesn't matter the color of your skin. Shema was Egyptian. At the end, it doesn't matter the color of your skin. Shema was Egyptian. At the end.
The entire Bible is about black people. Not only was Jesus black, but every character in the Bible seems to be black too. Yeah, Zephaniah and Jeremiah and Jebediah, those all aren't white people names, okay? And Jesus wasn't some tan, partially melanated Middle Eastern person either. I'm talking straight up black dude, okay? Even in the book of Revelation, when you get the vision of Daniel, he's describing someone with feet like burnt brass and white woolly hair, and we've got the deep running water voice with the red eyes, and you guys, he's black. The Jewish people are black people, like Kanye was right.
Want to say peace and blessings to everyone. Hope all is well with you guys. Hope and pray that you had a great Shabbat. We had a great Shabbat on our end. So just want to apologize for not scheduling this live earlier in the week. So I actually posted this live probably about maybe about an hour and a half, 2 hours ago. And then when I posted it, I still had some additional clips that I wanted to include inside this lesson. You know, it's a simple lesson, but I want to share with you a nugget that was completely overlooked. But then again, at the same time, this name was not brought up into the discussion until a particular professor brought it up, you know, and that name, that term is Scythians. Some would say Scythians or Scythians, however you want to pronounce it. That is a key thing that I want to identify, right? And with that being said, we can say emphatically, right, who was enslaved by the Egyptians, the ancient Egyptians, versus or the Kemetic people versus you know, those that want to say that they were, you know, with no historical facts, no geographical information or paleontology information, and you know, no DNA, nothing can substantiate their claim. So what we're going to do here, right? I'm going to take you through some information that you're already familiar with, but also add one additional nugget to it. And this nugget, I caught this nugget when I was actually just reviewing this particular person work. And what you see in the right corner of your screen, the Caucasian person is, you know, with the skull behind him, that is Samuel Morton, right? He's a paleontologist who studied craniums. And, you know, I did want to deal with one area that he pointed out. He also knocked down a few things, but of course, keep in mind at that time, you're dealing with racism, you're dealing with our people being enslaved. So there were certain viewpoints that many of those guys believed and taught. For example, that the ancient Egyptians were Caucasians, that in their minds, or according to them, decent civilization came from them, descended from them. But we're going to highlight a few things. As a matter of fact, let me drop this link inside the comment section. And I want to thank you guys for, you know, helping this channel grow. I know we go through our ebbs and flows when it's dealing with YouTube, and you know, they constantly unsubscribing people without their knowledge. They, I've had to deal with the ongoing shadow ban, notifications not getting out and all that other stuff. So I want to just encourage you guys, if you are subscribed to the channel or believe that you are subscribed to the channel, double check, because YouTube has been unsubscribing people. They have not been sending out notifications. So double check to make sure that you are still subscribed to the channel. All right. And click on that notification bell and check on it periodically. And for those that are not or new to the channel, I encourage you guys to subscribe to the channel. All right. So I have a couple of clips that I want to share to kind of set up where we're going at with this. All right. So let me pull up a couple of clips, and this is going to help set the tone for where we're going to go at in this discussion. And we're going to close out with a mic drop, so to speak, that we can further use to debunk this whole notion that Israel, you guys know what I'm referring to when I say that Israel, or those, Israelis, you guys know who I'm referring to. Those guys are known as these guys right here in this video clip.
You might run into one of these groups of the Khazarians that would kill you after learning everything they could about you. They would steal your story. Then they would go to China, pretend to be you, make the deal, and then go back, and the deal never happened. You might run into one of these groups of the Khazarians that would kill you after learning everything they could about you. They would steal your story. Then they would go to China, pretend to be you, make the deal, and then go back, and the deal never happened. But the fact is that the clan here was not descended from Shem through Judah, right? I mean, it's not descended from that line biblically. But the fact is that the clan here was not descended from Shem through Judah, right? I mean, it's not descended from that line biblically.
All right. So I see my cousin Benaiah in the building. I'm going to drop the link for him. So anytime you want to jump on, feel free to do so. But we're going to deal with these these name stealers. That's what I'm going to refer to them as, name stealers. All right. So I want to share a clip with you because in a debate that took place about 7 or 8 months ago, you had a professor, a Jewish educator by the name of Dr. Mike Brown, and he had a debate with Guerrilla Hebrew from I guess the name of, and correct me if I'm incorrect about the camp, Sakari, right? So they had a debate, and there was a couple of things that caught my attention, and I'm going to share the clip here of what caught my attention, and then I'm going to bring Benaiah in as well. So I want to share this clip, and we're going to kind of build around this here. Let me get this clip up, and then I'll bring my cousin Benaiah in, and then we'll build from here. So I want to bring up this clip here that really caught my attention. Here we go.
As for Deuteronomy 28:68, it did happen in history. You're correct. My ancestors, and if you're Israelite, I don't know your ancestry, but if you're actually a Jew, then our ancestors were sold into slavery, into Egypt, probably 2,000 years ago, the most recent time, but possibly even 2,700 years ago when we were exiled, the 10 northern tribes exiled from by the Assyrians. The Phoenicians may have sold us into slavery in Egypt as well. There's speculation among historians as far as that's concerned. But the fact of the matter is, I'm not the one bringing up modern history and trying to say that the Ashkenazi Jews were sold back into slavery. This is an argument I'm responding to in terms of going back into Egypt. This is an argument I'm responding to because Hebrew Israelites raise it all the time to say Egypt just means a house of bondage, which it doesn't. It occurs over 680 times. Mitzrayim, Egypt, occurs over 680 times in the Hebrew Bible, and it always refers to a physical place. Therefore, you can read throughout the Torah where it talks about you were slaves in Egypt under Pharaoh. You were slaves in Egypt under Pharaoh, and I delivered you from there. But under judgment, you'll be sold back there. right? So don't bring that up with the African slave trade. Don't bring that up with modern America. It has nothing to do with it whatsoever. And America is not Egypt. If you try to make it that, you're misusing the word, and therefore by your own criteria.
So we're going to pick apart his entire premise here. And see, this is where many of us should be offended, even those that are within the Christian church. You know, if we say the words or express the words that he stated, right, according to them, they'll call us anti, right? We'll hear all kinds of terms like phrases or labels like anti-Shemitic, right? But this guy can clearly say, come, you know, tell us how we're supposed to understand the scriptures according to them. So I have a source, but I don't include it in my live presentations because I know how certain spaces work. Their spaces work by a historian by the name of Robert Knox, right? Who completely shut down even the notion of them being in any type of slavery, dealing with their anatomy, showing that there's no proof according to their anatomy that they were subjected to any kind of slavery. And so before I bring my cousin in, I wanted to share one thing here because Professor Mike Brown is supposed to be a Messianic Jew per se. In other words, believing in Christ, a believer in Christ. So if he's a believer in Christ, and I know that he teach out of what is called the New Testament, then he just shot himself in the foot with his own premise about every time you see the word Egypt is referring to a physical place, in Deuteronomy 28:68 is referring to going back into physical Egypt as slaves. And he said, you cannot call the United States as refer to United States as Egypt. But let's go ahead and answer this question real quick. Let's debunk this with ease. Let's start with Revelation chapter 11, verse 8, and I'll bring my cousin Benaiah in. Let's see what it says here. And their dead bodies shall lie in the street of the great city, which spiritually is called Sodom and Egypt, where also our Adonai was crucified. So we see the term Egypt, spiritual Sodom, and guess where it starts at? Where what's called Israel today. Ancient Israel, ancient Jerusalem, and all of the places that Israel was scattered into, we're dealing with a spiritual bondage, spiritual Egypt. And starting with our promised land, it's referred to here as a spiritual Egypt. Why? Because dead bodies being laid all across the streets, all across the roads, all across the country, the territories. Are we not seeing a spiritual Egypt today? Are we not seeing dead bodies? The death tolls is at an all-time high over in that territory. And not just there, but everywhere where we have been scattered to. So just that here, just that point of his argument, we can knock down that argument with ease with just this verse here. I have more I can, but I'm not going to get into all of that. But I just want to just start off by knocking down what he called himself, telling us what we can and can't do. But we're gonna completely knock down some of this whole premise that he, along with his descendants, was enslaved in the Northeast Africa, enslaved to the Egyptians. So I want to give shout outs. Got my cousin on here, Benaiah. How's it going, Benaiah? Appreciate you jumping on here.
Hey, peace and blessings, peace and blessings. Hope you doing all right, Pastor Kelly?
Absolutely. Yeah, doing great, man. Doing great. Great having you on here.
Hey, thanks for having me on. And big peace and blessings to Miss Picard that's in the chat. Hopefully everyone's doing well. But yeah, that's an interesting comment by Dr. Brown. You know, but I guess at this point I shouldn't be surprised.
Yeah, I mean, for him to and I saved that. I was like, man, let me save that part of the clip You know, for him to even have the audacity to literally state what we as a people can say and not say. You know, telling us that the Most High is referring to taking us back into physical Egypt as slave and bondage, even though those consequences are perpetual, and we're dealing with a spiritual Egypt. So everywhere we were scattered to, that's spiritual Egypt. United States, spiritual Egypt. Britain, spiritual Egypt. Brazil, spiritual Egypt. Everywhere that we were scattered to is spiritual Egypt. And the taskmasters started with his own community. The Ashkenazi Jewish community enslaved our people. They were taskmasters. Anyway, go ahead, cuz.
No, I was thinking that, like, this is why, you know, I would say they would have to not believe in the Messiah, because, you know, if they do, and you believe what the Messiah is, the prophecy about, you know, about there being another scattering, another you know, captivity, and this was after Egypt, you know, that's problematic for them, because they can't point to anything that that fulfills the prophecy of the Messiah.
Absolutely. And when we deal with that prophecy, Matthew 24, the Messiah talked about the great tribulation, the great affliction that's going to take place towards Israel. And no matter how many try to slice and dice it, the transatlantic world war, the Arabic slave trade, and many other trades that was even that was still part of that whole period, you know, that is a great tribulation for our people. Of course, it's not going to be recognized as a great tribulation from those that have enslaved us, you know, because again, just with the Arabic slave trade, 40 million, the transatlantic world war, 100 plus million. King Leopold, you add another 15 to 20 million. So just that alone, and not even dealing with any some of the others, especially when we start getting into the Black Holocaust, when we start getting into Hitler and all of that, you know, with just that alone, we're dealing with what, 160 million people. Is that not a great tribulation? You know, do we not fall in within the parameters of what Christ laid out, that it was going to be like a treachery, like you know, no other since the time of Noah? Any thoughts, guys?
Yeah, no, well, it's kind of interesting because I think you made this comment, Pastor Kelly. It's like, you know, everybody wants to be Israel. They always want the blessing, but not the curses.
That's right.
You know, because the curses, you know, if they are Israel, they're supposed to be under the curses, according to the curses. And we actually talked about this when you know, we were I'm trying to think of the topic that we were talking about, but it's like, you know, we were talking about Israel being scattered, right? Oh, yeah, like about, you know, Israel being scattered to the land of their captivity. And, you know, it's I don't know, Pastor Kelly, it's tough to for these people, you know, I keep saying these people, it's tough for anyone to claim to be Israel and you know, supposedly under the curse, and they're not living in the land of their captivity. They're not being oppressed. They're not at the bottom of the proverbial, you know, totem pole or food chain, so to speak. You know, they're at the top instead of being at the bottom. You know, they're the head, not the tail. You know, it just doesn't match up with you know, with the curses of Israel, with the people of Israel. And that was one of the signs that was in the scriptures. You know, that was the sign to reveal to the world, you know, who we are. And, you know, shout out to the camps, because, you know, they were the ones that were standing on the corners telling everybody this, you know, reminding everybody this, like, hey, there's nobody else in the world that fulfills, you know, of course, you know, I bet you they're tired of us saying Deuteronomy 28, right? But that's so true. I mean, it's just one of those undeniable facts that separates us from everyone else.
Exactly. In perpetual. I mean,
perpetual.
Even though as a community, you know, where we live at, or where we're held hostage, so to speak, prisoners of war. I like to use that term. Even though things may appear to have gotten somewhat better, but I want to remind the people progression, right? Right. Progress, right? That's not freedom. You know what I mean? That could be a fool's gold. We have made progress in this country as a people, but we're constantly reminded that we don't matter. You know, again, we have to have laws for how we do our hair. We have to have laws based upon how we walk, how we talk, or what they're not going to subject us to, far as in terms of killing us, but they're still murdering us in these streets. This governmental system. You know, anyone and anything but the Negroes. You know, think about the day and time we're living in today, Benaya. We have a president who committed treason by law, promoted an insurrection, and now has basically won the nominee to be reelected. Now we can't not get around the facts. The fact is, that's what he had done. He should not even, if this was back in the times of, let's just say the 17th, the 1800s, treason was hell. The punishment, the penalties, man, they were very strict about carrying out the penalties for treason. But now you have a racist president, even though not saying Biden wasn't racist, because he is racist too. Both of them evil. But we have an example in front of us, and he's on the verge of being, he actually is the Republican candidate. Now, could we do those things? You know what I mean? We couldn't even think about it. So even going back to, Dr. Brown, I mean, if we said the things that he's stated, man, we'll be flagged. Anyone can talk about our history. Anyone can tell us who we are and who we not according to them. So any thoughts, cuz?
Well, I mean, at this point in time in the game, it just seems like that it's a little late for that. It's a little late for any I don't want to say substantial, but any valid counter argument to us being the people. And the reason why I say that is because, I mean, to date, I mean, it's the information that's out there is just so overwhelming. You know, I keep bragging on Brother Dante's Fortson's website, but like his website is a testimonial of all the information that's out there. And I'm sure, and as you know, that's not all the information, but you're talking about a repository of hundreds of books, of periodicals, of books that were published before the 1850s, or even a little bit after the 1850s. But all these books testify to us being the people. And, this is just one type of proof, because we have the books, but then we also have, the scriptures, because in the scriptures, we start off with the scriptures, but then, what we're doing is that we're going back and supplementing that with, all these old books. And keep in mind, family, like when we were in slavery here in the States, especially when we were enslaved, it was against the law for us to read. Like we could not read a book. If they caught us, our forefathers reading a book back during the time of slavery, part of the penalty is that they would cut off their thumbs, or worse. I mean, some of those books were vague as far as like what or worse meant, but the implication was that that could lead up to death, right? If they kept doing that, because the worst thing that the slave masters at the time wanted was the Negroes at that time to read the books that were available at that time. And that's why, here in this day and age, one of the things that we do is that we go back and read the books that our forefathers were getting their thumbs cut off to prevent them from reading. And sure enough, those were the books that talked about the Israelites being black, brown, melanated people, and not to mention all the portrayals of Israelites on walls, on reliefs. I'm sure you're going to talk about the some of the hieroglyphics over in Egypt, where without a doubt, those are black folks on the walls. So it kind of gets difficult when you try to spin those or convert those people to a European people with the I hate to kind of say it this way, but this is scientifically true, but with the Neanderthal gene, right? Because basically that's what's being forwarded. What they're forwarding is the skin mutation called or referred to as BNC2. So BNC2 is a skin mutation that came from the Neanderthal. You can actually prove this if you ever take like a 23andMe DNA report. They will give you a Neanderthal breakdown of the BNC2 gene, which is responsible for lighter skin. And so what Dr. Brown is proposing is that he's proposing that the early Israelites had the BNC2 gene, that the early Israelites had a mix of the Neanderthal gene, of the Neanderthal mutation. That's at the end of the day, Pastor Kelly, that's what he's arguing for.
And I appreciate you sharing that, and we'll definitely touch on that, what you just brought out, and that's what I'm going to use a particular source I'm going to use that's going to completely shut down his argument, and others that's taking that same argument. So before we get into it, I want to give shout outs to Judah Israel. Shalom to you. Peace and blessings to you. I pray all is well with you. I pray it is well. That's what shalom means. Some would say shalom. It simply means it is well. All right. So I pray that it is well with you. And also, family, let's show some love to Judah Israel for the love and support in this contribution tonight. Also, let's give some love and support for R. Bailey. Thank you for the love and support. Keep up the good work. And family, we thank the Most High for you guys, for not just the contributions, but your time, investing your time to watch and share the information that we are presenting to you. And, so much is being invested in this that many really don't understand the magnitude of that, as you brought up Dante Forston, his Black Hebrews in the Bible website. Takes a lot of resources to come up with a catalog, an online library, and deal with a lot of stuff from even the technology side of things of, companies like Symantec, trying to have his site and sites that are created by our community labeled as being having malicious codes and things along that line associated with it. So really appreciate you, family. Thank you again for R. Bailey for the contribution, as well as for Judah Israel for the contribution as well. All right. So let's go and cover a couple of things, family. And this is some of the things that you guys are already familiar with, some of the things that we covered in the past. But I want to reiterate and bring this back up, because when we get to, as Benaiah pointed out, when we start dealing with those skulls, when we start dealing with those craniums, we get I got a source that I'm going to share with you that I've shared before, but not from this angle, that completely shuts down this notion that there were name stealers, so to speak, right? Enslaved in Egypt. So we're going to start with this thought right here. Was the Scythians ever enslaved in Egypt? We're going to answer these questions here, right? Was the Khazarians ever enslaved in Egypt, ancient Egypt? Was the Ashkenazis ever enslaved in ancient Egypt? And again, I have a source that I've been using for 10 plus years by Robert Knox. But when I on an old channel that me and my cousin, Pastor Jerry Carr, had, and I put a teaching in that in reference to that, it got flagged pretty hard. You know what I mean? So that's why I didn't add that into these clips, just to make sure that I don't give YouTube any room to try to flag the channel because of sharing that. And again, he made it clear that just dealing with their bodies, their anatomy, they did not, they can prove that they never were subjected to any type of slavery. All right. But anyway, let's go and answer these questions. And I know, Benaya, you remember this right here. This is Aaron Elhake, or Elhike rather. This is him giving us clarity on who's who, telling us who the Ashkenazi Jewish community that we know of, as we know them of today, the connection, who they are connected to, and so forth. So this is a reference, an article that you guys are familiar with. But again, repetition, is key. We have to keep repeating these things, and we have to keep approaching our information as if we have new people listening every day. So that way we don't allow sources like this kind of get lost in the layers of information that we're sharing. So feel free if you want to expound on this as well, Benaya, but I'm going to go to read from this article. It's called Highlight Out of Khazaria, Evidence for Jewish Genome or Genome Lacking. In other words, saying that there's, no DNA evidence connecting them to Northeast Africa. And he's proved it, And so this is just some of the bullets from this article here, and I'll post it here shortly, that what I'm making reference to, and you guys can read it at your leisure. You can vet the information to ensure that we are not compromising this information. We're not interpolating it. So Aaron Elhake, or Elhike, a geneticist, and he's a Ashkenazi Jewish geneticist, a geneticist at the Johns Hopkins Public School of Health, thinks so. Well, what does he think? In a recently published study in Genome Biology Evolution, Elhake, 2012, he is calling for a rewrite of commonly held assumptions about Jewish ancestry. So what he's saying here is that, wait a minute, we have to now change. He's actually did something that many didn't think would be possible, right? And that's really dealing with the what is it called? Is it the Khazarian hypothesis, Benaya?
Yes,
The Khazarian hypothesis versus, is it the Rhineland or hypothesis? But he actually debunked that the main hypothesis, I think it was the Rhineland hypothesis that many were running with, suggesting that there's a DNA tie connection to Northeast Africa. And he actually gave proof behind the Khazarian hypothesis that is not just a hypothesis, an assumption. It is the truth. Did you want to touch on that, Benaya?
Yeah, I mean, I guess to kind of sum it up, yeah, he's basically analyzing the 2 points of origin theories, right? I guess that from a scientific perspective, he's approaching them as theories, like and trying to figure out like which one is correct, right? Did they start off from, like you said, Northeast Africa, or did they start off from the territory of the Khazars? And then I'm sure what you're going to get into is he's going to then do a couple of things. One is that he's going to compare DNA, right? And so there's this, and let me know if I'm getting ahead, Pastor Kelly, but I was going to say that in DNA, when you compare DNA, there's a term called genetic distance values, and the closer related two people are, the smaller the genetic distance value is. Like, so if a son and a mother compare their DNA with one to another, their genetic distance value is going to be super small compared to if a mother compares her DNA to like a third or fourth cousin, right? So the smaller the value, the closer you are. And basically what Dr. Aaron Elhite did was that he compared, the Ashkenazi DNA to, multiple groups that's out there. And one of the things that he did was that other people weren't doing was that he included a DNA from Georgia, Russia. If you guys aren't familiar with where that is, it's like just below the Caucasus Mountains, kind of close to where Azerbaijan is. He took there's some population samples from that location, and so he compared DNA to folks in that region, and it turned out that the genetic distance value was very small. In other words, it showed per DNA that they were very closely related to the people from the Caucasus Mountains, and that was one of the proofs or revelations that came out of Dr. Iran Ilhaik's study.
Appreciate it. And let me go ahead and play a clip from him, family, so you guys understand what Benaya just explained. And so, Professor Ilhaik, he's going to explain it, and you'll hear with his own words, so no one can say that we're taking his words out of context. Here it is.
When you see Ashkenazic Jews sharing high similarity to Romanians and Hungarians, this is because both of these populations were offshoots of the Khazars. They were both founded by these members of the Caucasus who ruled this area of north of the Black Sea, where we have South Russia nowadays, between the 7th and 13th centuries. Very powerful empire. They converted to Judaism in the 8th century, and they sent offshoots to Eastern Europe. And we still some Ashkenazic Jews are mapped to this region of Ukraine. They're not all mapped to Ashkenaz. Most of them are, but some of them are mapped to Ukraine, and we can see very nicely some kind of migration route using GPS. So they're not going to be identical. And over time, they're just going to be split. Now, the extension of these splits depends on how much time has passed. And that's genetic drift. Now, in the populations that we're talking about, Ashkenazic Jews, we're looking at 1,000 years. That's not enough time for random drift to create completely separate things. However, you mentioned it, and that's very good because it's a chance to refute another myth. Random drift has been used to explain why Ashkenazic Jews are different. When you compare them to the Palestinians, they don't look like Palestinians. When you compare them to English, they don't look like English. So they said, oh yeah, they because they married each other, random drift took its shot and created this unicorn. That's not true. They're just not being compared to the right populations where they came out. If you compare them to the population we mentioned, these Southern Europeans, Turkish populations, you will see much higher similarity. Genetic drift does not act so quickly.
All right, family. So you heard it from the horse's mouth, so to speak. So let me give some quick shout outs real quick, since I have a gap here to do so. I want to give shout outs to Ya'a Hasantewa, daughter of Zion, Shalom Mishpacha. I pray everyone had a restful Shabbat. Thank you for the love and support, sis. And yes, we had a blessed Shabbat. Thank you for the contributions tonight. Family, let's show Ya'a Asantewa, daughter of Zion. Let's show her some love. Also, we have Miss Tassis. Want to show some love as well. Thank you for the love and support for the super chat here. And let's see here. I also want to give shout outs to the author, Candace Phillips Anderson. Thank you again for the love and support. Shalom to you as well. We also have let's see, who else do we have here? Making sure we have everything in order here. Thank you again, author Candace Phillips. Thank you for the love and support. Also, we have Gentle B Star. Thank you for the love and support. And family, let's show some love to them for the love and support for their contributions tonight. And again, thank you, family, for the love and support. And forgive me if I'm stating this out of order, because it's coming up kind of quirky here with StreamYard. But thank you again for the love and support. All right. Now, going back to this article here, let's continue with it. All right, let's see here. So again, Aaron Ilhaik, a geneticist at Johns Hopkins School of Public Health, thinks so. In a recently published study of genome biology evolution, he is calling for a rewrite of commonly held assumptions about Jewish ancestry. Instead of being primarily the descendants of the 12 tribes of Israel, present-day Jewish populations are, finds Ilhaik, primarily the children of a Turkish people who lived in what now is Russia, north of Georgia, which you mentioned, Benaya, east of Ukraine, This civilization, the Khazars, converted from tribal religions to Judaism between the 7th and 9th century. The controversy cuts into by Elhaik's work runs deep, far past the lab bench. Among some circles, his conclusions are bound to be unpopular. And we know it's unpopular. Why? Because it's hitting these agendas. It's throwing a monkey wrench in these agendas. So it says, this is the first scientific paper to prove the Khazarian hypothesis and reject the Rhineland hypothesis, he says. And with it, about 40 years of research, although his findings will not be welcome in all circles. Go figure. Elhaik's interest is more medical than political. So he was driven by the medical perspective, of, genetic disorders that is known among the Jewish community as we know them. It says here, all I want is to help my colleagues who are studying genetic disorders, he says. I hope this work will open up a new era in genetic studies where population stratifications will be used more. All right, so let's skip down here. And this is another key point I want to make sure we highlight of what he states here. He says, previous studies had, for example, combined the question of similarity among and between Jewish populations. And now this is getting into what Benaiah pointed out, genetic distances, right? And what they found is that genetically, the different Jewish groups they have nothing in common, right? But anyway, between Jewish populations and the questions of ancestry and relatedness to non-Jewish populations. Elhaik viewed these questions separately. Jewish communities are less homogeneous than is popularly thought, he says. With Jewish communities along the former Khazarian border, we could call that part of the Isle of the Gentiles, right? Showing the most heterogeneity. His second question centered on ancestry. When comparing Jewish communities to their non-Jewish neighbors, Caucasus or Levant, in other words, the Middle East, which is Northeast Africa, populations, which is the closest to the Jews, right? That's the question. Say which these population or these groups are closest to the Jews. He says here, according to the genetics, all Eurasian Jewish communities are closer to, as Benaiah pointed out, the Caucasus population, he writes, with Central European Jews closer to Italian non-Jews as the exception. Not one of the 8 evaluated Jewish populations were closer to Levant populations. All right. So I want to make sure you guys understand that. He says not one of the 8 evaluated Jewish populations were closer to Levant population. In other words, they had no genetic closeness, so to speak, with any of the groups in Northeast Africa. And I'm going to prove this with a source dealing with craniums. All right. So according to Jewish geneticist Aaron Elhaik, there is no DNA proof that connects the Ashkenazi Jews to the Middle East. Anything you want to share, Benaiah, as I go to this portion of the lesson here, just to kind of break down, give the people an understanding of some of these names like Gog and Magog, and show how the Scythians and all of that are connected.
Yeah, one of the things we talked about with Dr. Aaron Elhaik, and that was when it comes to these tests, really it all boils down to just making sure that the right group is being compared to, because let's say, for instance, I think one of the examples we gave was that, let's say, for instance, if you have a father and a son, among a group of people, and everyone was taking a DNA test to see, all right, who was the father of this son, right? So let's say, it's kind of like, back in the Day family, there used to be a couple of shows where the climax of the show, or the whole purpose of the show, was to find out who the daddy was. Normally you would have a guy, right, and a woman, and then there would be a child that was, birthed, and they would try to find out, like, who's the daddy. So in order to find out who's the daddy, they would compare the father's DNA to the son's DNA. And if it was, of course, if it's super close, hey, you're the daddy. Well, same thing with DNA. When they're trying to figure out, who a certain group is close to, all they have to do, in these DNA tests is if you want to find out, who the daddy is, so to speak, you include the daddy group in the groups that you're comparing it to. So in this case, Dr. Aaron Elhaik, what he included the group of of the people from the Russian Georgian area. And the point that he was making was that it's easy to hide the truth that people were related to these Georgians by simply not comparing them to the Georgians, right? I mean, you compare them to everybody else. You compare them to people in the Levant. You compare them to the people in, Turkey and all these other places. But you don't. But whatever you do, you don't compare them to the daddy group in Georgia Mountain or Russia, Georgia. I keep saying Georgia Mountains, but Russia, Georgia, which is just below the Caucasus Mountains. And the thing that, like I said, the only thing that Dr. Aaron did was that he included that group into the suite or the set of DNA that the Ashkenazis were DNA was compared to. And what he found out in his studies was that the match was with that group. The match was with the people from the Caucasus Mountains.
Appreciate it, Benaya, for that breakdown. And family, I want to share a couple of clips from, of course, Dr. Brown. And this is dealing with the Ashkenazis. And we're going to go ahead and knock this down. And I have some other clips that I'm going to share as we progress. And I know that Benaya is going to expound on these clips. But let's go ahead and play a couple of clips by Dr. Mike Brown. And let's go ahead and knock down, what he says, right, about a particular group. And that's why we're doing this live here. Here we go. Fair use. Fair use.
Oh, here's another Bible dictionary, Erdman's Bible Dictionary. Ashkenaz, the eldest of the three sons of Gomer, the son of Japhet, and the name of a kingdom, referencing these same verses. Most likely it was the Scythian kingdom, and then also referencing Assyrian, so Akkadian, Ishkuza. The connection to the Cimmerian invasions accounts for its relation to Gomer. Aligned themselves with the Mani, the Scythians revolted against Assyria in the 7th century BC, but were afterwards conquered by the Medes and the Persians in 538. They provided contingents of troops for the Persian attack against Babylon. And then after a few hundred years, they're lost from history. So they have zero to do with Israel, zero to do with the Jewish people, zero to do with Ashkenazi Jews today. Zero. You say, well, where did the name Ashkenazi came from?
Now we got to give the Stranger Danger Award real quick.
Stranger danger! Stranger danger! Stranger danger! Stranger danger!
Now let me play one more clip by him, and then we'll go ahead and break down the Scythians and show that they didn't just disappear. All right. So let's listen to another clip by Dr. Mike Brown.
So, a little over 1,000 years ago, as Jewish people scattered around the world had now immigrated in Europe and now were living in the Rhineland in Germany, they looked at the name Gomer in Genesis 10, and they connected Gomer with Germany, so they took on the identity of the name Ashkenaz. It has nothing to do with Ashkenaz in the Bible, which is a descendant of Japhet. It's just a name that was taken. Okay, it's that simple. Just like my last name Brown doesn't refer to the color of my skin or anything else. It was shortened from a Russian name when my grandfather came over at Ellis Island. The name got shortened to Brown. It's just a name. That's all it is. So the idea that Ashkenazi Jews are descended from Japhet is a myth, 100% false.
All right. So in family, if you experience any issues with the clips as far as no sound, that's nothing on my end because I can hear the sound. But I do know that YouTube are now doing some additional things to suppress the views and suppress the audio by not allowing certain clips to play. So this is just giving you confirmation that they know what we're presenting to you guys is the truth. Okay, so let's go ahead and get into this here. Let's deal with Magog. But you guys know these names here, but I just want to go deeper, do a deeper dive with what Mike Brown presented, and we're going to knock all of that down, and we're going to get to a point that I really want to bring home this point from the source about to prove that he has no connection to he and others that are European descendant, European Jewish people per se, have no connection to Northeast Africa, which is the true location. Northeast Africa, even though they call it the Middle East, that's the true location of Israel. Is really Northeast Africa, not Middle East. That's a modern construct. But anyway, let's deal with who is Gog or Magog, right? These are sources, family, I shared. This is coming from the Easton Bible Dictionary, 1894. And notice what it says: Gog, region of Gog, Magog, region of Gog, the second of the sons of Japheth. And it gives scriptures to support this. In Ezekiel, it is the name of a nation, probably some Scythians or Scythians, however you want to pronounce it, or Tartar tribes descended from Japheth. So we see give some information here about Magog, right? The region of Magog, right? Magog, region of Gog, rather. And we see that it's connected to the Scythian people. All right. And these are some of the sources that Dr. Brown brought out. And we're going to use his own sources that he brought out. And we're going to show that he's not properly and fully representing these sources, So it says here, denote Scythian nations, fierce and innumerable, who live beyond the Caucasus and the Lake Maeotis, excuse me if I butcher the name, and near the Caspian Sea, and spread out even onward to India. And it gives some additional locations here. But then we have to understand Magog, according to scripture, is the second son of Japheth. And we can confirm this with Genesis chapter 10, starting at verse 2. The sons of Japheth, Gomer, Magog. And so we see Magog listed here. Bediah, Javan, Tubal, Meshach, Tiras. Okay. So according to the Easton's Bible Dictionary, 1894, Magog is also connected to the Scythians or Scythians. I'm saying it both ways because some pronounce it Scythians, some pronounce it Scythians, so I'm pronouncing it both ways. So who are the Scythians? Who are the Scythians? Who are these people? Right? Well, let's go to the Britannica right now. Let's see what the Britannica has to say about these people. It says Scythians, also called Scyth or Saka or Sake, members of a nomadic people originally of Iranian stock, known from
as early as the 9th century BCE, who migrated westward from Central Asia to southern Russia and Ukraine. So we're getting more of an idea of these people, these nomadic people. We see Russia, modern day Ukraine. These are descendants of these people, not just them. We could get into Romania, we could get into Poland, we could get into Germany. These are all descendants of these people, right? So it goes on to say the Scythians founded a rich, powerful empire centered on what is now Crimea. All right. So who are the Scythians? Keep asking that question. All right. This is a source here, and I know Benet, if you want, you can expound on it as well. It says here, this is coming from academic .com or whatever. But this is an article, and I'm going to drop these sources in the chat, and I'm going to put it in the description once we complete this lesson here, so that way you guys can go back and vet the sources. But it says here, an analysis of 393 Ashkenazic, Iranian, and Mountain Jews and over 600 non-Jewish genomes demonstrate that Greeks, Romans, Iranians, and Turks exhibit the highest genetic similarity with Ashkenazi Jews, right? But notice you don't see any of Northeast Africa, groups like the Ethiopians, like the Egyptians. You don't see any of that here. You don't see any of melanated groups being included in any of these testing, right? But nevertheless, it says the geographic population structure analysis localized most Ashkenazi Jews along primeval trade routes in northeastern Turkey, adjacent to the primeval villages with names that may be derived from Ashkenaz. Iranian and Mountain Jews were localized along trade routes on the Turkey's eastern border. Loss of maternal haplogroups was evident in non-Yiddish speaking Ashkenazi Jews. Our results suggest that the Ashkenazi Jews originated from a Slavo-Iranian confederation. Has nothing to do with the ancient people, the ancient Israelites, the ancient Egyptians, the ancient Ethiopians. Has nothing to do with any of those guys, which the Jews call Ashkenazic. An example, there we see Scythian. So we see, improving that the Scythians just didn't disappear. All right. They just didn't disappear. Okay. Benaya, did you want to elaborate on this?
Yeah, I mean, to me, like the easy button for this one, and this is what I think that Dr. Brown's going to have a really hard time with as far as being able to refute it, and that is, so the Scythians and the Yamnaya, like I said, these are groups that occupied that same space, different times, right? But they were called, referred to as by different names, but what they've done, family, is that they were able to extract DNA from those groups, and they were able to extract, what's called like, the Y haplogroup, which is the kind of like the how can I put it, the DNA designation for the male lineage. And so the male lineage of the Yamnaya, the male lineage of the Scythians, or however you pronounce it, is like R1B1, or I believe the another designation for it is called M269. M269. And guess who else is M269, right? Part of the Ashkenazi lineage is M269. And so that's why I say the easy button is just simply saying, okay, well, who in that cohort, the Ashkenazi cohort is M269. Whoever is M269, according to DNA, have the exact same DNA as the Scythians, has the exact same DNA as the Yamnaya. Case closed. That's it. That's it, family. If the two DNAs are identical, that's it. So like I said, that's the easy button, Pastor Kelly. The fact that their DNA matches the Scythians, or the fact that their DNA matches the Yamnaya, is pretty much case closed.
Absolutely. And I appreciate you for slam dunking, catching the alley oop and catching it off the glass. Right. So, and family, that's why we're going through these sources and we're presenting this to you guys, because eventually you may have to deal with this discussion, especially if many of you guys are teaching. And some of you guys may be trying to figure out, how do you introduce family members to this awakening or to this truth? How do you navigate through what you're hearing, right? With discernment. Okay. So who are the Scythians? Who are the Scythians? Right. And let's go to the Anchor Bible Dictionary, because Dr. Brown did make a reference to the Anchor Bible Dictionary, volume 1. And let's see what it says about Ashkenaz. Right. We don't want to just deal with the Scythians, but let's look at Ashkenaz. Let's see what it says about Ashkenaz. First descendants of Gomer, who is the first offspring of Japheth in the table of nations. And again, it referenced Genesis chapter 10, verse 2 and 3. We already highlighted that. And also it tells us in Jeremiah 51:27, Ashkenaz appears along with Ararat and many as a kingdom called upon to oppose Babylon. It goes on to say the name is identified with the Neo-Assyrians Ishkuza, who appeared between the Black and Caspian Seas in the 8th and 7th century BC, driving out the Cimmerians or Cimmerians, right? Not the Cimmerians that the Shemitic people, but there's a whole different group of people right here. But the Cimmerians, these are like Celtic people or the Celtic people, all right? So, in threatening the Assyrians, for Herodotus, these people came to be known or be called the Scythians. So we see the Scythians among the Magog. We see them connected with the Ashkenazis. So when you hear Dr. Brown make these words, I'll play his words one more time. I know this is repetitive, but hey, that's how you learn, through repetition. That's a psychological truth, right? But let's hear what Dr. Brown says again, and then we'll finish reading this.
So, a little over 1,000 years ago, as Jewish people scattered around the world had now immigrated in Europe and now were living in the Rhineland in Germany, they looked at the name Gomer in Genesis 10, and they connected Gomer with Germany, so they took on the identity of the name Ashkenaz. It has nothing to do with Ashkenaz in the Bible, which is a descendant of Japhet. It's just a name that was taken. Okay, it's that simple. Just like my last name Brown doesn't refer to the color of my skin or anything else. It was shortened from a Russian name when my grandfather came over at Ellis Island. The name got shortened to Brown. It's just a name. That's all it is. So the idea that Ashkenazi Jews are descended from Japhet is a myth, 100% false.
So that's what he says about the Scythians. All right. That's what he says about the Scythians. All right. So we see here again, Herodotus makes reference to the Scythians, and we see that they are synonymous to the Ashkenazis, as we're highlighting in this definition. So it says the correspondence of the consonants. Now, this is getting into the linguistic side of things, but it says Ashkenaz is Kuza and Scythian is obvious. So it's showing us the correlations even from a linguistic perspective. So you can also study languages as a way of identifying who's who, especially if you start with understanding the trio of languages called the Proto-Indo-European language. And that's what I've used to confirm who's who, right? Pi, that's where you get pi from. But anyway, so it goes on to say here, although cultural associations reach back into the 3rd and 2nd millennium BC, present archaeological evidence for a distinctive Scythian culture begins in the 7th century BC. All right. So this is telling you that, hey, they have a culture, right? And again, they were not, they didn't just completely fall off the face of the earth. And so we see some of the additional sources here that's referring to the Scythians. We see possible portrayals of Scythians appear in the 9th century release of Ashurnal, Sapal, excuse me if I butchered the name, but the it says, but the first Neo-Assyrian mention of the Ishkuza, and is still dealing with Scythians, Ishkuza is still also recognized as Ashkenazi, occurs during the time of Sargon II in the 8th century BC. Driving back the Cimmerians or Cimmerians, the Scythians were able to push south to dominate Asia. An example, East Turkey and Media in the latter part of the 7th century BC, right? About this time, a Scythian raid against Egypt was stopped by Psammetichus II, and this is according to Herodotus, right? So for the later history of the Scythians and the question of their identification with the enemies from the north mentioned in the first part of Jeremiah. But then it tells us to go see Scythians here. So one of the things I want to make sure we understand about the Scythians, they were also known for savagery. This group was also known for savagery. And you guys remember this source here? This is an article titled Researchers Test 2,400-Year-Old Leather and Realize It's Made of Human Skin. A group of horse riding warriors kept some gruesome battle trophies. Scythians in modern day Ukraine made leather out of human skin. A team of researchers has determined likely as a macabre trophy item. The discovery affirms a claim by the ancient Greek historian Herodotus, who wrote extensively on the Scythians or Scythian life. And I have some of his works. I didn't put it in this lesson here because I didn't want to have this lesson longer than what it needs to be, right? So in their work, researchers use paleoprotometics to establish the sources of leather found on 14 different Scythian sites in southern Ukraine. The manifold sources, sheep, goat, cattle, horses, and yes, humans, suggest that the Etruscan steppe group had a sophisticated knowledge and advanced way of what? Making leather, creating leather items such as pocketbooks, of course, back then it probably would have been pouches, bags, whatever the case may be. All right. So why is this historical barbaric information is good and important for us to know? Right. Because again, this is dealing with Nat Turner. I'm not going to read all of this, but this is dealing with Nat Turner and also showing how what they did to Nat Turner and some of our ancestors. And then this source right here, that's dealing with leather from human skin. This is proving how they were using our skin as leather, going back to the times of the height of slavery, the transatlantic world war. And I'll just read a little bit from it, but we'll continue on here. But just a little bit, it says, I remember that 2 or 3 years ago, I incidentally referred to a prominent physician of the city wearing shoes made from the skin of Negroes. He still adhered to the customs, insisting that the tan hide of an African makes the most enduring and the most pliable leather known to man. Only the last week, I met him upon the street with a brand new pair of shoes. I looked at his footwear. I always do his his pedal covering, have an irresistible fascination for me, and said with a smile, is the downtrodden African still beneath your feet? In the most matter of fact way, and without the shadow of a smile, he answered, I suppose you mean to inquire if I still wear shoes made of the skin of a Negro. I certainly do, and I don't propose changing in that respect until I find a leather, right? That, in other words, what he's saying is more stronger, more durable. All right. So this is this group. We're dealing with descendants of them. I'm not going to read all of this here. This is some additional information from this article. All right. But what's interesting here is he told her that he had purchased them. And this is another person that they're referring to. these leather, Negro skin made out of leather. Leather made out of Negro skin. It said purchased them from what? A Turk in Alexandria. But anyway, let me fast forward here, family. So that way you understand, they know that there's something special about us. But then we also see the descendants of these people, the Scythians or Scythians, committing barbaric acts towards our people, savagery to its fullness. All right. So according to the Anchor Bible Dictionary, the Scythians are the descendants of Ashkenaz. And I said savagery, right? So let's highlight here and let's see the savagery here. What it's going to say here. It says biblical scholars sometimes associate the Scythians with Ashkenaz and with the bringers of destruction in the prophecies of Jeremiah and Zephaniah. Outside the Bible, their reputation for savagery is alluded to in 2 Maccabees chapter 4, verse 47, 3 Maccabees chapter 7, verse 5, 4th Maccabees chapter 10, verse 7. So there is sources, there is information that you could go into the Maccabees, and maybe this is one of the reasons why you don't see any of these books included in your translation according to the church, because as you start going deeper into your studies, you will start unpacking this information. Anything you want to share, Benaiah, as we progress here, as we get to a key point, dealing with both?
Yeah, I'm trying to grab a reference from Nell Painter. Nell Painter, I believe she's like a Princeton. She was a Princeton professor, and she did this book that was called "The History of White People." And in that book, she has a reference where she talked about the people of the Scythians, like what they were known for, and some of the things that they did. And to your point, Pastor Kelly, she pretty much says the same, like echoes the same sentiments that you just read from that other reference about the people in that territory, how they were viewed, from the other folks in the region as being, barbaric and very warlike and that sort of thing. So I actually finally found the book. I was just trying to find a reference. I apologize, family. I don't have the actual page just yet. If I grab it, I'll bring it up. But I just did want to interject just two things quick, Pastor Kelly. And one is that the people in that region had a look and feel, like their physiology was like they were known for having red hair, blue eyes, white skin. That's red hair, blue eyes, white skin. And in fact, blue eyes, if you ever do the research and just type in, like in Google, the origin of blue eyes, what you'll find is that blue eyes originated in Ukraine. It originated in Ukraine. So in that territory of the Scythians, and the territory of the Khazars, and the territory of the Yamnaya, that is a sign, right? Blue eyes is a sign of where that person's DNA comes from. And that's also also a trait that's also carried through, certain individuals, like blue eyes, red hair, white skin. And I'm sorry, fam. I'm trying to find this Nell Painter reference. I may have to come back to you on this one, Pastor Kelly.
Okay, while you're doing that, I'll go ahead and continue with the source, and then when you find it or come across it, then I'll open up the floor for you.
Okay, thank you.
All right. But family, we see that these people, right? It says here, outside the Hebrew Bible, their reputation for savagery is alluded to, and I gave you some of the references, scripture references, and you can confirm this. Go to the Maccabees, and I have it in the presentation, but I didn't include it in this because I didn't want to have the presentation longer than what it needed to be, but you can confirm it. And this is saying the same thing. The Scythians, excuse me, or Scythians, called Ashguzi, right, by the Assyrians, apparently first appears in written history of the annals of Asarhaddon, and seemed to be centered at that time in what is today northwest Iran, according to Herodotus. The Scythians ruled over the Near East for 28 years after entering the area from the north. Traditionally, this period of rule is assigned to the 7th or 6th century BC. The Scythians continue to be mentioned in texts of the Babylonians, Persians, the Greeks as allies and as enemies through the 4th century. All right. So this again, this is giving you some credible, some interesting information on the Scythians, which are connected to the Ashkenazis, which are, and I'm going to show you, connected to the Khazars. So Scythians' presence in the Near East is restricted to the Crimea and the shoes of the Black Sea. Ovid records Scythians' life, or records Scythians' life in the 1st century AD. All right. So let's go ahead and go on, continue here. So the Scythians occupied what's called modern day Russia and Ukraine. There's another group who are connected to the Russians and Ukraine. They are called the Khazars. You guys already know this. The Jewish community, as we know them, falls under two main groups: Sephardic Jews and the Ashkenazi Jews. We know that there's other groups, but these are the two main groups that you hear about. All right. So the Ashkenazi Jews are the Eastern or East European Jews, which were found in Poland, Russia, Germany, and Western Asia. All right. So the Jewish Encyclopedia, 1905, revealed that the main stock of the Jews came from this people known as Khazars or Khazars. All right. So let's see here. This is coming from the Jewish Encyclopedia, volume 4, page 1. It says here, Khazars or Khazars, a people of what? Turkish origins. Let me say that again. A people of Turkish origin whose life and history are interwoven with the very beginning of the history of the Jews of Russia. And remember, I just uploaded a video about a Jewish state of Russia. Look it up. I just uploaded it about 4 days ago. There is a Jewish state of Russia. Is that a coincidence? Just like what we see with the law of return, they had that same thing active for the Jewish state of Russia. You know, plane tickets and everything, giving out free travel and all for that community to return to their native country, their native home. So the kingdom of the Khazars was firmly established in most of Russia's South Russia long before the foundation of the Russian monarchy by the Varangians. Jews have lived on the shores of the Black and Caspian Seas since the first centuries of the Common Era. Historical evidence points to the region of the Ural as the home of the Khazars. Among the classical writers of the Middle Ages, right? The Middle Ages, right? Now we get in between the from like the 5th to 6th century up until what? The 14th, 15th century, right? So it says among the classical writers of the Middle Ages, they were known as Khazars or Khazirs or Akadzirs and Akatirs. And in the Russian chronicles, right? But that's giving more information. So you see that the Scythians is connected to who? The Khazars. And then when we look at this term Meshech, I'm not going too deep into this, we see Meshech is referring to Moscow. As you see here, regarding Meshech and Tubal, some assign a Russian identification connecting these two nations with the modern Russian cities of Moscow and Tobolsk, right? So we see that you see the Scythians all through here. We see that many of these terms that we see like Meshech and Tubal, these are Russian. These are what is called Khazarian territories. Right. All right. So, and this is just giving us more information here. It says northern powers headed by Russia all agree. Right. So the reference to Meshech and Tubal as being Moscow and Tobolsk is a clear mark of identification. Thus, the name Moscow derives from the tribal name Meshech and Tobolsk, the name of the principal state, okay, from Tubal. So let's fast forward here. Let me see here. All right. This is still reiterating the same point. All right. Let me see here. All right. Ethnologists, it goes on to say historians who track the migrations, really, these are invasions, right, of people tells us after the flood, the Japhethites migrated from Asia Minor to the north beyond the Caspian and Black Sea. They settled in the area of Rosh that we know today as Russia, right? So you see how all of this connects. So Wilhelm Gesenius, the world-class Hebrew scholar whose Hebrew lexicon has never been surpassed, said Gog is undoubtedly the Russians. He also identified Meshech as Moscow, just reiterating what we pointed out, Tubal as Tobolsk, right? The earliest province of Asiatic Russia to be colonized, and also the name of the city in which they say here, which Peter the Great built the old fortress, the pattern of Kremlin in Moscow. All right. And notice what it says here. Meshech was founder of the Mashi, a barbarous, in other words, barbarians group of people who dwelt in the Mashian mountains. He went on to say that the Greek name Mashi, derived from the Hebrew Meshech, is the source of the name for the city of Moscow. All right. So we can confirm this more. I'm not going to get into this. It's still further confirming Russia, Moscow. This still reiterating what we pointed out. So when we go to Easton Bible Dictionary and we see Meshech, this is further confirming what I already read and still grouping all these people together. But notice what it says here. This is the key that I want to get to here. It says here, during the ascendancy of the Babylonians and Persians in West Africa, the Moshi were subdued. But it seems probable that a large number of them crossed the Caucasus Range and spread over the northern steppes, mingling with the Scythians. There they became known as Muskovs, excuse me if I'm butchering the name, and gave the name to the Russian nation and its ancient capital, by which they are still generally known throughout the East. So they are not a group of people that just disappeared, fell off the face of the earth. So again, was the Scythians ever enslaved in ancient Egypt? Absolutely not. And before I go into this portion, Benaya, anything that you want to share? Because we get ready to deal with the craniums.
Yeah, well, just to kind of sum up, do just a quick summary, and that is, so family, so over in that area, of the Scythians, many folks have our historians have crossed over that territory at different points in time. Of course, we talked about how that territory was referred to as different names, throughout time. Like we said before, at one point it was called Yamnaya. At one point it was called, the Scythians. At one point it was called the Khazars. But one of the things that we found was that the people in that territory had a consistent look and feel. The consistent look and feel was that they had red hair, blue eyes, white skin. Red hair, blue eyes, white skin. And it's also interesting that, like, the white skin component of it, of course, like I was saying before, that is traces back to a skin mutation called BNC2. And the BNC2 skin mutation, that comes from, intermixing with Neanderthals. And like I said, Pastor Kelly, I did find that reference, Pastor Kelly. I'm not sure if you want me to show it or not. I have it on a web browser.
Sure. Did you want to share that before we get into this portion of here? Because I'm going to play a couple of clips by Professor Kennedy, and then we'll get into the craniums and all that. Did you want to share your screen? Or
yeah,
did
let
you
me
want
see.
me to pull it up for you just on this side?
I will share it. Let me see if I can. Let's see. Share window and screen. Youth notifications. Yeah, sorry, family. I'm trying to see if it will allow me to share my Mozilla screen here. Hang on. So I'm going to try this. And
okay, I see your share here.
Okay.
All right.
Are you seeing my Kindle library?
Yep.
Okay, perfect. All right. So this is from a book, like I was saying before, family. In that territory, there have been, different people have written about it over the course of time. So what we're looking at is a reference that is, it's a little bit later, but it's still going through that territory. And this person, as they're traveling through that territory, he's describing the people in that territory, right? And he's probably going to give just a little bit of history. And this is Chardin, Sir John Chardin, right? And so he's physically going through that territory. Now I'll skip right to the point here, but I just want to show you that when he's describing it, I'm not sure if you can see my screen or not, but at the very bottom of the screen, it says in the 17th century, this was untamed country, according to Chardin, the lands of people without religion and without police. A scientist at heart, he took meticulous notes while racketed by constant fear. Chardin loathed this chaotic Black Sea region where brigades controlled the highways, often threatening his goods, his freedom, and his life. As he says of the Saracens, which is the same area, it says, it is impossible for them to glimpse an opportunity of thievery without taking advantage of it. They eat with their hands, go to the bathroom right next to where they eat, then continue eating without washing their hands. Chardin is totally disgusted.
Oh, come on, cuz. Oh my goodness, man. Man, y'all, you guys know. I can tell you about some that I've worked with, man. Oh my goodness. Go ahead, cuz. I'm sorry.
No, you're good. It just says the inhabitants of the Magrillians, the Caucasian people on the northeast coast of the Black Sea, are vile. They and their neighbors are huge drunkards, worse than the Germans and all Northern Europeans when it comes to drinking. It just goes on and on and on. But basically, I just wanted to show you that the description in that area, and again, this is from Nell Painter. She's I believe she's a Princeton professor. She's either Princeton or Harvard, but I believe it's Princeton. And this is her book, right? This is her book. And then the other thing I just wanted to show you real quick is that in that territory, there's consistency as far as like the characteristic of those people, being warlike, being savages and stuff like that. And then there's also consistency as far as like the way they look. And then there's also consistency as far as the DNA, because we talked about DNA, how DNA is really the easy button to all this. And that is the M269, which is what I was referring to before. So M269, you can see it on your screen. This traces back to the Yamnaya. So the Yamnaya are M269. And then even folks that write Wikipedia pages, they actually reference this scientific paper, where they even call out, M269, such as have been found to be prevalent in ancient DNA found in individuals associated with Yamnaya culture, right? So again, it's in the books, family. And just to show you what it looks like, so this is the Scythians, just to show you that we are talking about the same area. This is a map of the Scythians, and this is a map of the Yamnaya. So you can see in Ukraine, which all this war and stuff that's going on. This is Crimea down here, where Blue Eyes originated from. But you can see Yamnaya and the Scythian territory is pretty much the same territory. And then the last nugget I'll tell you is that the gene mutation that gives white skin, which is called BNC, the BNC2 gene, comes from the Neanderthal, right? And then what they've done is that they've taken Neanderthal samples from various Neanderthals remains across this territory. Like this, what you see on your screen is where the Neanderthals were found, right? And what they found is that out of all these Neanderthal samples that they were able to extract DNA from, the sample that the DNA of most Europeans is closest to is the DNA sample. I don't know if you can see it on your screen. It's called the Mesmeskaya cave. Actually, let me see if I can. There might be a better picture, but the Mesmeskaya cave, and that Mesmeskaya cave is in the Caucasus Mountains. So it appears as though the mixing of the Neanderthals occurred with this, the particular group of Neanderthals near the Caucasus Mountains, where that BNC2 gene mutation crossed over into the modern day human population. But I know it's probably more information that you're looking for, but just wanted to show you that there are DNA ties that not only tie the Ashkenazi to that region. There's phenotype characteristics that tie the Ashkenazi to that region. The blue eyes, red hair, white skin. There's language that ties them to that region as well as the history. So I'll pass it back over to you, Pastor Kelly.
I appreciate it, Benaya. And family, make a note of the sources that Benaya is sharing here. He's sharing some great sources here for you to go back and review at your leisure. And before we go into this, what I have on your screen, the Crania Aegyptica, before we get into that, I'm going to show you some clips. But let me give some shout outs real quick. Want to give shout outs to Sharon Roberts. Thank you for the super sticker. Really appreciate the love and support. And, family, again, this is, all what we're doing, this research, the things the resources that you guys are contributing to our channels. This is how it offset the cost, because a lot of what we do is coming out of our personal expenses. And so we really appreciate the investment from you guys of investing into the works that we do. So really appreciate it. All right. So let's go ahead and get into this here. But before we get into it, I'm going to show you a couple of clips by Dr. Kennedy. I uploaded a video on her almost 2 years ago with her dealing with North Africa and some of the racist approach that the Europeans have taken, and educators, so-called educators, have taken to manipulate history. All right. So here's a couple of clips, and then we'll go ahead and dive into it. All right. Let me see here.
This idea, this sort of continually trying to find this idea of separating out North Africa from sub-Saharan, as if the Sahara was the impermeable boundary that nobody could get through, is really a continually problematic type of argument. Particularly since we have early texts that tell us that, right, Herodotus tells us that he says the Ethiopians and the Garamantes are indigenous to North Africa, and that, of course, the Phoenicians and the Greeks are not. But he makes it very clear that people they call Ethiopians are indigenous to North Africa and Northwest Africa in particular, right? But they are not sub-Saharan. So I constantly, what is the obsession that people have with this idea of sub-Saharan, that whenever they ask any question, what they're trying to do is prove that sub-Saharan Africans aren't part of the ancient Mediterranean world, which we know is false. Not only do we know, of course, that people that we would call quote-unquote sub-Saharan Africans ruled Egypt before the Persians got there, among others, but that they have this continual culture that runs up and down the Nile. And we know from our ancient sources that they believed very firmly, and they interacted with what in the area that they called Libya, right? So ancient geography, Herodotus separates. There's a big geographic debate in the 5th century, right? So on the one hand, we have Hecataeus, who has his map of the world, and Herodotus seems to be addressing him and trying to correct him at various points in his history. But there's debate of whether there's one continent or two continents, whether everything west of the Nile is its own continent called Libya, or whether it's not. One of our ancient sources actually has Europe and North Africa as one continent. Yeah, because Libya is the name that he uses for everything west of Africa, essentially, is what Herodotus uses. But it's also used at some points for the entire continent of what we call Africa. Because remember, Africa is a Roman word. It's not a Greek word. They didn't call it Africa. This idea that there's a natural impermeable boundary that starts at the Sahara Desert, and that there's no penetration, and that everybody who has quote-unquote black skin is below that line historically, and everyone above that is somehow magically white, shows, one, a real lack of knowledge of how space works and how geography functions and how mobility and movement in the ancient world function. It shows a very limited view of our ancient sources. Like I said, I think I said this in another clip. If you're going to live by Herodotus, you got to die by Herodotus too. And if you're going to cite Herodotus for evidence of one thing, then you have to accept the fact that Herodotus says that the black people, Ethiopians in our ancient parlance, Ethiopians really in our ancient parlance, are indigenous to North Africa.
All right, so we're going to unpack this, and Benaya, if you need me to connect with the full video, because I was going through it, I didn't have a chance to put some additional clips in it, but I can connect to the video because I have it on my computer here. And so, family, we're getting ready to get into the deep water right here, and this is going to be the additional mic drop that we're going to present here. And again, as we shared here, we can't, we want to make sure that we don't just solely rely on DNA. We want to rely on some of the other ways of confirming who's who, what groups occupy certain territories. And now we're getting into a person by the name of Samuel George Morton, who is a paleontologist or whatever, and he studied craniums. Now, of course, his work for some of his assumptions can be way out there, but the one thing that is constant that he makes it clear is who was enslaved in the catacombs. And those, out of those 750 skulls that was examined, he made it clear who was enslaved, right? And so this is a point that I want to highlight real quick, and then I'll turn it over to you, Benaya. So this is on page 60 of this source. It says here, if it be allowable to make these data the basis of calculation for the past 35 centuries, it will follow that upwards of 10 millions of Negroes have been brought as bondsmen into Egypt during that period. Right? He goes on to say the vast influx of Negroes into the valley of the Nile must necessarily have left its impressions on the physical traits of the Egyptians themselves. In modern times, as seen in the Copts, and in more distant periods, as proved by the Negroid heads, in which both the configuration and expressions are too obvious to be mistaken. But it may be inquired, how does it happen that Negroes or their descendants should be found in the catacombs if they constituted a menial or slave caste in Egypt? So he's asking this question, how is it that he found, and through his examination of these skulls, Negroes, right? How do he find Negroes or their descendants? So he's referring to, when he say Negroes, he's dealing with the enslaved Negroes of his time, which would have been his present time. He's saying, how does it happen that the Negroes that that are enslaved during the Transatlantic World War, and it says, or their descendants should be found in the catacombs? Right? He said, how does that happen? Or if we reverse it, how does it happen that Negroes and their descendants, which is referring to those that are currently enslaved, either way, how you want to, if you want to swap it around, either way, he's asking the question, how is it that you see these enslaved Negroes in the Transatlantic World War? How do you see, how is it possible to see these same skulls in the catacombs? Right? So he says this on page 66, right? Notice what he says here. And this is what's so important. Oh, you know what? Let me see if I could correct this slide. Let me do it real quick, because I made an error here. Let me do something real quick. Let me correct this one, and then we'll show a main slide, a bullet that I want to really go in on. All right, let me fix this real quick, because I need to include the last portion of that quote. All right, let's see here. All right, I believe this is the quote. Yeah, there it is. All right, let me go ahead and show this now. All right, let's see. So on page 66, this is what he says. Negroes were numerous in Egypt, but their social position in ancient times was the same that it now is, that of servants and slaves. This is his conclusion, right? And if you see this works, you'll see at the end of this particular chapter, he lists his conclusions, summarizing what
his works or his studies or whatever. So he says Negroes, and this is confirming Exodus chapter 1 when it says that the Israelites were numerous and that they was all through the land of Egypt, right? So it says Negroes were numerous in Egypt, but their social position in ancient times was the same that it now is, that of servants and slaves. Now here's the mic drop right here, because I called my cousin Benaya when I was up, and I just so happened was going back over reviewing his works. And remember, Benaya, I called you up. I was like, Benaya, I got to tell you this. This is a
right.
So Samuel Morton, he was clear that the Negroes were enslaved in Egypt. But let me go to the next bullet within the same document, because the reason why it didn't stand out years ago, because we didn't hear anyone trying to separate themselves or even highlight the Scythians. So now that became something that was inserted into the discussion, when I went over this document again, it was like, wait a minute. I know I didn't just read what I just read. So Samuel Morton was clear that the Negroes were enslaved in ancient Egypt. But notice what he says here. Samuel Morton was also clear that not a single skull from the Scythians were discovered in ancient Egypt. Wait a minute. Did you guys catch that? I'm going to prove to you that Samuel Morton is clear that there's not a single skull out of all the skulls he examined. He did not see a single skull from the Scythians. In other words, the Ashkenazis, the Khazars. He did not see a single skull from those guys. Let me show you here. Let me pull it up here. Let me show you this last slide, and I'll let you go, Benaya, as far as let you loose on this. So notice what it says here. It says, the national characteristics of all these families are are distinctly figured on the monuments. So what he's saying is the different groups, racial groups that exist at that time and can fast forward to the present of his time. He's saying that you see some type of representation of different groups, whether it's through monuments or whatever. So he says here, the national characteristics of all these families of man are distinctly figured on the monuments, and all of them, excepting the Scythians and Phoenicians, have been identified in the catacombs. So what he's saying, that he did not find a single skull of the Scythians, not a single skull of the Phoenicians inside those catacombs. So guess what? There's this right here, just slam dunks, proving that there was no Scythian captivity. There was no Scythians, there was no Khazarians, there was no Ashkenazi captivity. There was none of them that was enslaved. And let me zoom this in right here so you guys can see that I am not interpolating or modifying the text here, but you see right here, the national characteristics of all these families of man are distinctly figured on the monuments, and all of them excepting the Scythians and Phoenicians have been identified in the catacombs. That is a mic drop right here. That is a complete mic drop right here. So this proves that the name stealers, guess what? They are not in the catacombs of Egypt. You will not find not a single reference. You will not find a single bone, a single skull referring to them over in Egypt, ancient Egypt, as slaves. But he did point out that our ancestors, guess what, were enslaved all through Egypt. He said tens of millions. All right. So you got the floor, Benaya. There's the mic drop right there.
Yeah, I don't know if anything needs to be said after that. That's it. I mean, basically he's saying that, he didn't find any M269 skulls there. So that pretty much cleans up, the whole argument, that Dr. Brown was trying to make. And it seems like, Pastor Kelly, that all the evidence is supporting them not being there. Like we said, we got the evidence in multiple places showing that, M269 is a founder DNA group. So they, there's no way around that, because that DNA report had been released by I want to say it was released by Israeli like publications. I think you published it once or more than once actually on your channel, and I published it as well. But so that association with that haplogroup M269, which is the haplogroup of the Yamnaya, which is the haplogroup of the Scythians. So then, Pastor Kelly, when you read that, that reference that confirmed that, hey, we don't find the Scythian skulls in Egypt, then that's it. It's pretty much a wrap after that. So yeah, that's a great mic drop, Pastor Kelly.
Yeah, well, you already know when I called you, I was like, Benet, you're not gonna believe this. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I mean, and again, it's nothing but the Most High. I was just going back over this source. I'm like, let me go back over this. Just as, how it goes when you go back over old sources to see if there's anything that you may have missed or anything that you can, further pull, extract out of it. And when I saw this here, I was like, no way. This is right up. Right. This is the very next bullet, cuz
yeah,
the one that and I quote this source over and over again, but this is the very next bullet. Let me pull it. Let me zoom in, and you'll see the very next bullet. Right. Let me see if I could pull this off here. Let me take this highlight out. All right. But notice right here, this is the very next bullet. Negroes were numerous in Egypt, but their social position in ancient times was the same that it is now, that of servants and slaves. But then it goes right to the next bullet. The national characteristics of all these families of man are distinctly figured on the monuments, and all of them excepting the Scythians and Phoenicians have been identified in the catacombs. And the reason why it stands out now is because of Dr. Michael Brown. When he mentioned it, now when I go back and read this, anything I see Scythians, now that's standing out. You know what I mean? So it's like now I can't just, now he gave us more information, more things that we can really pull in because of arguments that are out there. So
right.
Any thoughts, cuz?
Yeah, I think I have the other part of that. See, you see how on your screen you have number 9? I think I have the other part of number 8. Can I share a screenshot with you?
Oh, go for it. Go for it.
Let me see. Again, forgive me, fam. If let's see if I can do this screenshot. Allow. All right, I think it's there. You go. So see how mine start. It has like number 8 at the top. I think this is the other part of that. I was trying to find it in that reference, but as you can see, family, when it talks about the Negro, where it says, we have the most unequivocal evidence, historical and monumental, that slavery was among the earliest of the social institutions of Egypt, and that it was imposed on all conquered nations, white as well as black. So numerous was this unfortunate class of persons that it was the boast of Egyptian kings, recorded by Diodorus, that the vast structures of Luxor and Karnak were erected by the labor of foreigners alone. Of Negro slavery, in particular, the paintings and the sculptures give abundant illustration. So on one hand, at number 9, it shows who wasn't there. On the other hand, number 8 shows who was there. So
Absolutely.
just want to land back on that, Pascal.
Absolutely, family. And as you can see, that is the mic drop. You can't get around the sources that we shared tonight. You can't get around it. That's a tough hill to try to climb, no matter how you slice and dice it. And so that's why we're doing this live tonight. That's why I didn't want to let another day go by. I didn't want to let the weekend go by and not do a live. I know I normally do one either on Thursday or Friday, and I also do uploads. but I didn't have a chance to put a video together, which I am working on one now that I'm going to do an upload with some additional clips that's going to further confirm the Egyptians of being who they are with the hieroglyphs, showing who they are, showing Negroes. When you look at the what they refer to as the Nubians and the Hiscos and all that, we see that they were not Caucasians, and this is before they, when I say they, these groups with all alternative motives, trying to whitewash, selectively use pictures whitewashing the people of that territory. So, but with that being said, family, really appreciate you guys for tuning in tonight. Benaya, any final words you want to give to the people?
No, well, it's funny because when you say whitewashing, now that I know like the DNA mutation, in my mind it's like I think BNC2 washing, like that. Yeah. Like that's the name of the skin mutation. It's like BNC2, but yeah, they're trying to BNC2 wash everything. So, but yeah, great discussion, Pastor Kelly. Yeah, that was indeed a mic drop. That was a huge find, and that pretty much wraps it up.
So anyone you want to throw up in the garbage can, we already pulled the stranger danger out, but who do you want? Anyone you want to, or any particular group that you want to just give them the garbage can tonight before we conclude?
Man, I guess anybody at this point in time that's still trying to promote, this alternative truth, how people would say, I would like to give them the trash can.
Absolutely. And I want to give the trash can, I already gave the trash can. Well, I gave the chair actually to Dr. Mike Brown, but I want to give it to anyone, including him, that is teaching, misteaching the people when it comes to Deuteronomy 28:68. I want to give the garbage can to just even the notion of trying to insinuate that they were enslaved in ancient Egypt, which that is, we just proved it, that's not true. So I want to give a garbage can to he and any others that are teaching that deceptive doctrine. And of course, I want to give a 3-piece. Got to make sure I keep my 3 pieces available. So let me give a 3-piece. And let me give them their order to go. So with that being said, family, really appreciate you guys for tuning in tonight. And I will go back over and copy some of the resources that we shared in this video. We'll put it inside the description of the video. But again, really appreciate you guys. And if you have not subscribed to the channel, click that subscribe button to this channel. And also, if you have not hit those thumbs, get those thumbs up. Let me see where we are right now. We have 336 likes. So we should easily be at least 400 likes. So if you have not, click that like button, whether you agree with the lesson or whether you disagree with the lesson, still hit that like button, because that does make a world of a difference when it comes to the algorithms. And again, it costs you nothing, just a little investment of your time just to click that like button, to click on that like button. So with that being said, again, click that like, subscribe to the channel, click that notification button, and until we come again. And before I conclude, Benaya, any videos or any work that you're getting ready to release that you want to let the people know, and also let them know about your channel for those that may not know?
Yeah, we'll just have it's the Benaya Israel channel on YouTube, and also the Hidden Hebrews channel on Rumble, if you all have a Rumble account over on there as well. And yeah, I guess as far as any videos coming out, just going to do a review on the Manhattan Institute. One of their people aren't aware of the things that they are publishing against the African Hebrew community. So just want to kind of bring some of that, some of that stuff to light. But yeah, probably that's going to be the next, most high willing, that'll be the next video.
Amen. And family, really appreciate it. And thank you, cuz really appreciate you with the last minute phone calls, the invitation, but I really appreciate you jumping on. So family, in the words of the Most High, Yahweh, that the words that he gave to Moses in Exodus chapter 14, verse 13 and 14, when Israel was in a panic mode, they was fearing the Egyptians was coming up in the rear. They was at what appeared to be a dead end that was in front of them, with the water. So the Most High gave Moses these encouraging words to the Israelites. He told Moses to tell the people, "Fear ye not, stand still, see the salvation of Yahweh. These Egyptians that you see here today, they will not have power over you again. You will not see them ever again. The Most High will fight for you." But here's the kicker, family. We have to hold our peace. Let me say that again. The Most High will fight for us, but we have to hold our peace. In other words, the Hebrew word that's there is charash, which means be quiet, selective and calculated silence. Can't go back, can't stay here, keep moving forward. Shalom.
Listen, Genesis chapter 11, verse 10 explains the genealogy of Shem. Shem was a black man in Africa. If you repeat this back, Genesis 14, verse 13, Abraham steps on the scene. Being a descendant of Shem, which is a fact, means Abraham too was black. Abraham, born in the city of a black man, called Nimrod, grandson of Ham. Ham had 4 sons. One was named Canaan. Here, let me do some explaining. Abraham, Isaac was Jacob had 12 sons, for real, and these were the children of Israel. According to Genesis chapter 10, these were the children of Israel. According to Genesis chapter 10.